The NBA draft offers struggling franchises a glimmer of hope for the future, especially when they pick in the lottery, because no matter how bad things could be in the present, all it takes is one home run in the draft to find a franchise cornerstone to build around and start winning. Especially when teams have picks in the top 5, the expectation by everyone, both within the organization and who support as fans, is that they'll add someone to the roster capable of producing at a high level for years to come. However, with this, there's also a level of trust and patience required with young players, because not everyone is ready to dominate from day one, and if that trust and patience is not present, then the player's development can suffer, which brings us to the topic of today's video. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the biggest busts in NBA history, Hasheem Thabeet, and included in this discussion will be what got him to the top of the basketball world, what went wrong, and how he's now attempting to make a return to the NBA to try to resurrect his lost career. Before we start though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. Thabeet's journey as a basketball player actually happened completely on accident, as one day in Tanzania, where he is from and grew up, he was actually headed to a soccer field and passed by a basketball court as a shortcut. But when he saw people playing pickup games on the court, he became very intrigued and would oftentimes watch them play. He was 15 years old when this happened, and with his height of 7'3", he realized there could be a future in the sport for him, and it could be his ticket to going to college. So he started to play more and more after that. In fact, he was so dedicated to this path that he would go to internet cafes, and when people would finish up at their computers, he would sneak on and use their unused minutes to send out emails to colleges, hoping to draw their attention. Eventually, his play on the court got him to the point where he came to America and played a year of high school basketball in Houston to hopefully play his way into Division I offers. In his 1 year of high school basketball, he was visibly unskilled and inexperienced with the sport, but if there's one thing he was naturally good at, it was blocking shots and protecting the paint, and boy did he do a ton of that. Despite lacking in the fundamentals and still having a long way to go in most other aspects of the game, he did end up being a 4-star recruit with offers to several big-time programs, and when it came time to make his decision, he committed to play for Coach Jim Calhoun at UConn. Calhoun saw loads of potential in him, and he knew that he hadn't ever really been coached properly because of how late in the game he was to beginning his playing career, and in his own words, said that when he first got to UConn, he couldn't play. What he could do very well, though, was learn, and slowly but surely, he started to come along and produce at a very high level. He wasn't much of an offensive threat as a freshman, but as I mentioned earlier, he's a naturally gifted shot blocker and averaged a massive 3.8 blocks per game, and even had a game where he had 10 blocks in a single game, which tied UConn's school record. By his second season, he showed a ton of improvement and polish in his game, earned more minutes, and went on to win the Big East's Defensive Player of the Year award. It was in his junior season, though, that he really started to take off in the basketball world, as he went from a nice anchor in the middle of a solid Big East team to one of the top NBA prospects on the radar of every NBA team. He finished that year being named the National Defensive Player of the Year, Big East Player of the Year, and Second Team All-America. Then, after coming all this way, he declared for the draft, because he knew that he was viewed as a lock to be one of the first names called, and coming from a background like his, he wanted to help cash in to help out his family back home in Tanzania. Now, despite the monstrous defensive production he had in college, it was clear as day at the time that whoever took Thabeet was going to need patience with him, because after all, he only started playing the sport at 15 years old, and hadn't really been coached up on the basics of the sport until he got to college. So when he got drafted second overall in 2009 by the Memphis Grizzlies, he was almost destined to fail, because the franchise had zero patience with him and didn't allow him to develop at all. Unfortunately, the Grizzlies had playoff hopes immediately, so they favored the experienced players that could contribute to wins now, but if that was their plan from the start, then they never should have drafted a project like Thabeet. They only played him 13 minutes per game as a rookie. Then in his second year, that number plummeted even more, down to essentially just garbage time, before the Grizzlies ultimately gave up on him and shipped him out at the trade deadline just 1.5 years after taking him with the second pick. In the eyes of fans everywhere, Thabeet was headed down the path of being a bust, but most young lottery picks get taken by franchises with their best interests in mind, and develop players for years, while Thabeet was legitimately never given a chance. In a recent interview, Thabeet himself even said, "The Grizzlies gave up on me. You never heard of a number 2 pick who got as few minutes as I did, or as few chances as I did. If I'd been drafted by a different team, it would have been a different story. There's no question in my mind. I might be playing for the Pacers. If I'd been developed, I'd still be in the NBA right now." It's a harsh truth that legitimately stunted his chances of ever becoming something in the league, because from that point on, he never found his footing. He was sent to the Rockets from the Grizzlies, but they never gave him minutes. He then went to Portland for 1 season, but again, was not a priority and barely played. He rounded out his career in Oklahoma City for 2 seasons, where, surprise surprise, he rode the bench, and when they traded him to Philadelphia in 2014, his NBA hopes had pretty much vanished, as the Sixers immediately waived him and no more suitors ever showed interest. This was a rough period in his life for obvious reasons, but while many others would have probably given up and accepted that they made a lot of money playing the game they love, Thabeet continued to grind, and still to this day has NBA dreams. He has to watch players from his draft like Steph Curry, James Harden, Tyreek Evans, and Drew Holiday all ball out in the prime of their careers, while he's struggling for any kind of basketball playing gig. It's not an easy thing to deal with mentally, and the stress and weight put on someone like that is tough. Continuing on the grind to make it, he signed with the Pistons D-League team in 2014, but after 1 year there, it didn't lead to anything. He then played for a brief time in the Philippines, and never got discouraged, oftentimes saying that it was part of the journey and it'll get him back to the NBA. After that, he spent 6 months in 2016 training with legendary trainer Frank Matriciano, who is known by many in the NBA world as Hell's Trainer because of how tough he is on his clients, but ultimately he succeeds in making players better, and for Thabeet, he got in the best shape of his life. After that, he went on to play in Japan, and after that, he started working with another big-time trainer in Keith Williams, who has worked with Kevin Durant and DeMarcus Cousins amongst many others over the years, and it was through Williams that he got to work out with multiple NBA teams again. However, none of those workouts led anywhere, so he then chose to accept an offer in the G League, because his best chances of making a comeback would probably have been through a team with NBA scouts' eyes watching. That brings us to the current year, but the G League stint ended as poorly as almost every other opportunity did, as he just recently got released. The thing about Thabeet as a player is that he kind of represents the era of basketball that has seemingly been left behind, and he came right as things began to change. The slow, bruising bigs who control the paint but aren't very mobile are basically dinosaurs nowadays. Centers today either need to be rim-running shot blockers or highly skilled passers and shooters that can spread the floor and create. Unlike most other busts you see, Thabeet is one of the instances where I genuinely feel sorry for him, because he was essentially doomed from the start, and all he's ever wanted was a chance to even play to this day. In his own words, "I look at other players from my draft class, and they're in the prime of their careers, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I know what my role is. I'm not trying to score 30 points a game, but I can come in and get rebounds and block shots. If I get another chance in the NBA, even just one more year, I can be comeback player of the year and defensive player of the year. That's the goal." He's got the right attitude, he knows what he has to do, and he knows what his role would be. He just wants a chance. He's 32 years old now, so the clock is ticking, but he's gonna continue to push until the very end, which I believe is very admirable. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about Thabeet's basketball journey. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.